everyone, so today I'm doing a tutorial for this V-neck eyelet kind of summery dress. And these are the materials you'll need: fabric, scissors, rulers, thread, needles, and a zipper. And then you'll need pattern blocks, which you can find on the website, I'll link below. You just input your size and it's really easy. So here I'm just showing how you do the pattern manipulations. I'm just making a V-neck in the back and the front, and then I'm adding a sort of curved line where I'm going to cut it and then add seam allowance. The only thing with that is I'll link kind of inches down below, like how far down I put the V-neck and like how far I did the bust line kind of thing. But I found it was really easy just to kind of use like the underwire of my bra to mark where I wanted it to curve, like start curving and all of that. So here I'm just adding seam allowance, and I'm doing this in quarter scale just so it's easier for you guys to see. The only thing about this is for the underbust piece, don't add seam allowance to the center front, just because it's going to be cut on the fold. I accidentally did this in this video clip, but that's the only issue here, just don't do that. And here I'm just making the sleeve. I think I added about 3.5 inches in the full size pattern just to the ends there. And now I'm doing the skirt block, which all I did was rotate the pattern piece where I traced just kind of the front area and the bottom, and then rotated it at the dart point halfway, so only closing the dart halfway and then tracing the rest of that. And then I ended up shortening it and adding sort of a curve just so that when you actually cut and like wore the skirt, it sits more straight, because if you just make it completely straight across the and like the sides of the skirt will go downwards, and we just want it to look even. Also, I added seam allowance to the back, but not to the front, because in the front, again, it's being cut on the fold. If you cut anything on the fold, you don't want there to be seam allowance where the center front would be, or center back. So here I'm just cutting two back bodice pieces. You can tell that here I left the top shoulder dart. I ended up later on, when testing the pattern out with the front piece, I ended up just pretty much cutting that down. The V was deeper because I needed the zipper to be longer, or to have space to fit in the top bodice and then on the skirt. So here I'm just cutting out the bust piece, and I just marked the point of the dart with a pencil, but you can use a pin if you want, and I clipped the notches at the bottom so it was easy to match them when I was going to sew them. And then I finished the V-neck edge, so I just opened the bias tape and then pinned it on and sewed it at I believe it was 1/4 of an inch, just right where the kind of fold line was. And I just ironed the seam allowance towards the inside of the bias tape and then just iron that down. I didn't sew it down because I just wanted a clean edge, and when I sew the shoulder seams and stuff, it'll hold the bias tape down. So now I'm just pinning the top bust part to the under bust, right sides together, and you'll notice I left some of the bias tape just kind of hanging off the edge. That was just in case I needed extra to sew together, but in the end you can just trim that off when you've sewn all your pieces. And I ended up realizing pretty much when I was done the dress that there was a tuck in where I'm sewing the seam right now. Just make sure to pull your fabric and like make sure you're not bunching up or anything like that. And here I was sewing together the middle of the neckline, like where the V meets, those two excess pieces of bias tape, just so it wasn't kind of coming out or in the way or splitting or anything like that. And I just trimmed the excess. Now I'm sewing together the shoulder seams and the side seams. Now for the center back, I pinned it and I only sewed it at the widest stitch length so that when you put the zipper in, you can just easily stitch rip it and you won't have issues with that. And then for the sleeves, I just started off by hemming them, just folding up 1/2 inch, and then I sewed my widest stitch length 1/4 inch away from the top of the sleeve. And then I just gathered it by pulling the string along, or I guess pulling the fabric along the string. And I used the original sleeve pattern where I had kind of those lines marking the original size, like width, to match the sleeve size. And then I just sewed that right sides together to the armhole. I actually didn't get a clip for this, but I know in other videos I have clips of me pinning it to the armhole because I know it can be confusing. And now I'm just pinning the skirt front to the back pieces, right sides together. So for the center back seam, I pinned it all the way up, right sides together, and I marked out where the zipper started on the bodice center back and then where it ended on the center back of the skirt. And then I only sewed at the widest stitch length at the top until the part that I marked, and then continued at like my normal stitch length all the way to the bottom, just so you can stitch rip the rest of the zipper. And now I'm just pinning the bodice to the skirt right sides together. The only thing about this is you want to make sure that you don't sew over the center back seam where they meet, just so you can fit the zipper. I'm sure I could have done that and stitch ripped it, which if you try it, let me know. I think I was overthinking that part because where it met up ended up looking a little funny. But let me know how you would figure that out. And then here I'm just pinning the zipper to the dress, which I meant to pin it to the side seam, or the like seam allowance kind of thing where the zipper was meant to be. I just ended up kind of blanking and pinning it to the whole dress, but make sure you only pin it to the seam allowance, which I ended up changing as I was sewing along. You just want to sew the zipper to the seam allowance and then do the top stitch after, just so you have a nice clean finish and you don't have a wonky zipper. And now I'm just like clipping the seams open so you can actually use a zipper. This part is a little longer than the other parts in the video because it was kind of hard to see with the way I recorded it, but it was hard to record me doing it. So the sleeves kind of, if you make this, you'll notice it's kind of like really puffy and big. So I ended up turning the seam inwards onto the seam allowance in the armhole. You can kind of see here, and just pinned it on there so that when I like pushed it in and ironed it, it had more of like a clean look and there was no hem showing. And this was just kind of trial and error. Like sometimes things just happen the way they do when I sew, and it's not a perfectly planned out method of making a sleeve shape, but this was the shape I was going for, so it worked. Now I'm just hemming the bottom of the dress. I turned it up 1/2 inch. Obviously you can kind of hem it however you want. I just end up doing sort of a top stitch. And for the little bow tie part, I just pinned the piece, like folded it right sides together, and then I sewed all the way around like the open edge, leaving a small gap so I could turn it inside out. And here I tried to show me turning it inside out and my camera died, but pretty much I put a safety pin through the hole and let it fall all the way down to the end, and then open up the safety pin on the inside, stick it through, and then close it. So then it's holding onto some of the fabric. You can like see the pin of the safety pin on the outside, and then the rest is on the inside, and you just kind of like push that through until it goes through the hole. And this is the final result. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know how you liked this tutorial, if there's anything you want me to change or anything you want me to make next. Thanks for watching. Bye!